welcome back to another edition of the Dirty Verdict Podcast. I'm your host, Peter Taft, joined as always by my co-host Kyle Herbert and Bill Ogden.
Happy to be here.
Pleasure.
Thank you. I went with Kyle. Usually I introduce Kyle second, but Bill, you've been going a while.
Yeah,
I almost forgot you were.
That's fair.
We've got a special guest, a good friend of mine, Jeff Davis of the Bradley and several other names, but kind of Bradley is the firm's name.
Right.
Am I right? Okay. It's Bradley, Arant, and then several other
Bolt Cummings. Is this still the name?
Bradley, Arant, Bolt Cummings.
There you go.
LLP.
Excellent. Well, thanks for joining us. Well, Jeff.
Glad to be here.
Jeff was my first private law firm boss when I was a total idiot young lawyer.
You say that in my past.
Fire you on Valentine's Day?
No, that was a different first boss. But yeah, so Jeff and I go way back, been friends a long time, and he tolerated my inexperience and for a while before I took a job up in Austin.
What was a young Peter Taft like?
Well, he was awesome. We actually tried a case up in Montgomery County.
Mm-hmm.
The Amy Cash Dollar versus the Woodlands Pavilion. It was a mosh pit case. 2 idiots threw a third idiot on top of this girl and had a compression fracture.
So it was literally in a mosh pit.
Well, no, actually, it was on the lawn.
Oh, it was at the Cynthia Woods Mitchell Pavilion. So usually it's like Kenny G one night, and then this was some REO Speedwagon or some band like that.
Bill keeps inviting me to go see Nickelback at Cynthia Woods.
Funny you make the joke. Like, I went 2 nights ago, I saw the Goo Goo Dolls at Red Rocks, and they were actually fantastic.
Good.
Yeah, very.
Who was the act, if you don't mind me asking, if you recall?
I'm not sure who was the band that was playing, like Metallica.
Good question.
Like Barbara Streisand or Yanni, something real.
No, it was pretty hard stuff.
Well, because that was the issue. So the girl was hit by the flying kid, and I think ultimately the staffing was not appropriate for that type of
allegedly
band, because they just didn't typically have bands that drew a really unruly crowd. It was like usually Kenny G or something, for more of our, not Bill's age, but maybe our. You're young.
I just entered the last year of my mid-30s.
So that was kind of the allegation, is that they weren't prepared for this type of crowd, and that's why there wasn't enough staffing to prepare.
Supposedly the way that they were supposed to do it is when you get a congregation on the lawn, is they peel you away like an onion, because they would have a tendency to do some moshing and some crowd surfing on the lawn, even though obviously it's at an incline, which is not the best place to be doing it, which part of the reason that they had an issue. And so, yeah, and they were all together. So they were all together when they did it. And so, in fact, it was one of the first times that the responsible third party was used. So we tried it in November 98. Statute, I think, came into effect in 96. We actually RTP'd one of the kids, and one of the kids knew Dean Treese. South
Jerry
School of Law. And he called me up and said, Jeff, what is this? And I said, well, it's an RTP. He goes, well, do I need to be concerned? I said, not unless the plaintiff brings them in, because all it is just, the ability to put you on the form. And sure enough, the jury came back and they put, in fact, we told the client and said, look, the most likely outcome is they're going to put a quarter on each of them. And sure enough, that's what they did. They put 25% on the pavilion, 25% on the 3 idiots. So we got the verdict that we were thinking. We were thinking, okay, $20,000 back in the day, when $20,000 was a lot of money, back in the 1998. I actually left Peter take the verdict, because I had a trip with my mom and my 2 brothers and our wives to New York.
Did he settle it for $1 million right before the jury came back?
No, but I was using the airphone on the plane.
Wow.
Way to New York, back when you could have airphones. And the first 2 times I called, there wasn't a verdict. I can remember exactly where I was. And Peter goes, well, I got good news and I got bad news. So the good news is they did exactly what you said they were going to do, but the problem is they found gross negligence. I said, what?
We gotta come back.
So gross negligence. I said, well, how much? $20,000.
Oh, motion for entry of judgment.
Yes, and funny was Judge Mays in Montgomery County. He was former plaintiff's lawyer, and mean, he's a good judge and called it. I think he tried a good case. But when we were at directed verdict, he goes, well, on this gross negligence claim, I mean, they've got to have scintilla, and it's probably the smallest scintilla I've ever seen, but we'll let the jury decide, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened was we talked to the jurors, and in fact, one of the jurors we talked to, I think it was the only one we talked to, was actually the foreman, and it was a woman. It was a 10-2 verdict, and she was the foreman, and she was dissented, and she was one of the two.
Oh,
Wow.
And so that's the second time I got a punitive damages against me in a 10-2 verdict before they changed it. But what was interesting, I said, well, where'd y'all get gross negligence? I said, well, what happened was your general manager testified that the reason why we didn't think they were doing any moshing is because there weren't more injuries. Because, obviously they go into first aid and they have all these incident reports, and there weren't very, very many incident reports from that concert. And so the jury kind of said, well, wait a minute. If you know that, moshing is going to take place, then you have a conscious, disregard, and you didn't do what you're supposed to do. And so, so it was a conservative jury, obviously rewarding $20,000 for punitive damages, but that's obviously back in the day where
present day Montgomery County is slightly more conservative.
Yeah,
and still thinks 20,000 is worth that exact amount.
I remember because I was taking it, and I talked to the jury. I remember the one takeaway is they said, we just wanted to send a message. We didn't want to cause pain to the facility, but we just wanted to let you know, hey, you need to tighten up your practices so this doesn't happen again. So just
that's what punitives are for?
Yeah. Like a fine, but not
to deterrent.
Not a Michigan Collins Stallion level $20 million.
So in 1994, I went to a Tom Petty concert at Cynthia Woods. There was no moshing.
Neither at the Harry Connick Jr. one that I went to.
It was a very,
I love Harry Connick.
very, one might even say chemically sedated crowd there for Tom Petty in 1994.
I can imagine. But that was interesting and fun and good experience.
How long did you guys work together?
Just a year.
Oh, all right. Well,
so
wait, did we go over where you're from? Did we do that? Did we jump right in? Yeah. Okay, I didn't. I thought my memory was just bad because.
Jeff's got an interesting story. We just interviewed Drew Shirley, who spent 10 years being a sportscaster. You also had a little detour, which will tie in with another part that I want to cover with you. So, Jeff, you're originally from Harlingen, Texas.
From Harlingen, Texas, down in Rio Grande Valley. Dad was a lawyer, kind of a typical small town lawyer, did basically everything. Banking, trust and wills, tried cases. And then I went to the University of Texas, and then when you went straight through to the University of Houston, graduated in 92. I did almost what Peter did. I wanted to go to Austin. And so I had an opportunity with a litigation boutique firm with two senior partners and named partners of their particular firms who were getting kind of squeezed out and maybe not as valued as I thought. A guy named Jack Maroney, who was 67, Brown Maroney at Oaks Harline. And then Milton Bankston was 63, and it was Bankston Riding Gray Hill. And they decided they wanted to start their own firm with two other partners of Jack's. And so I started with them. And in fact, I clerked for Brown Maroney and Liddell Sapp and didn't get an offer from either one of them.
In Austin?
In Austin. Pretty tough market. I mean, I was in good company of people also didn't get offers. But that January after my summer, Jack Maroney asked the head of recruiting and said, hey, is there anybody that, we might want to look at? So, yeah, Jeff Davis. And so they had me up, and I went to the Headliners Club. I don't know if it's even still there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And we had dinner with Jack Maroney and a guy named Mike Crowley, who was a couple of years later was the chairman of the state bar, and then a guy named Mike Hull. And I called him Mr. Maroney, but Jack Maroney asked me, he said, well, what are you looking for in a firm? And I said, well, kind of looking for a firm that, I go to the firm Christmas party and don't have to wear a name tag. And he stands up and he says, amen, brother, extends his hand over the table. Didn't give me the offer then, but he did give me the offer the next day. And so I practiced there for 2 years with actually Ross Ellinger, father of Sam Ellinger. And then decided, was kind of disenchanted. My dad had died, and that was probably what you're alluding to, Peter, as I decided maybe practice the law isn't for me. And so I had an opportunity to buy a franchise that I basically sold advertising that you would affix to the cup of a golf cup and put advertising in the bottom of the golf hole. And it was called Adnol. And I bought this thing, and
you retired 3 years later on all your ad hole money.
I did it for 4 months. It didn't sell a freaking ad. And realized I made a big mistake. I'm still in Austin, and a guy named David Jackson, who was with McGinnis Lockridge, he had went out on his own. He was an oil and gas lawyer. I mean, did title opinions and did some litigation, and he was needing some help. And so I went and worked for him. I literally did title opinions. I mean, where you get the graph paid. I don't know if you've ever done a title opinion, but you literally get
they have that's on computers now, I think.
I think you're right. And so this was 95. And I literally got graph paper. You get the meets and bounds, and you draw it from like whatever the little peppercorn is, and then you draw it around and make sure that it finishes. So I did that for about 4 months, and then decided to move back to Houston and interviewed with Andrews and Kurth and a firm called Sewell & Riggs, and insurance defense firm, and then got an offer from Andrews and Kurth and the insurance defense firm, but I was waiting on Sewell & Riggs, and I really wanted to work for Sewell & Riggs because one of the good friend of mine from Harlingen, Bruce Hurley, was there. I really wanted to work for them, and I called him up and I said, "Look, we've got to move pretty soon, and y'all are waiting on you." And they said, "Well, we've had an issue. I think they represented either Dow Corning or Bristol Myers in the breast implant, and they got stiffed. I think it was Dow Corning because they got stiffed because of bankruptcy." He says, "Hold on." And so next day I get a call from Bobby Meadows, who called up and said, "Hey, I'd like to give you an offer, but I want to let you know we're about to merge, become the 4th largest firm in the state, being Gardner Wynn." And so I said, I'm coming to work with you guys. And so 4 months later, we merged with Gardner. I was there for 23 years, and 2018 moved over to Bradley ARANT and been there ever since. So,
yep. Bobby, I don't know if I told you this, but Bobby Meadows was there when I was there, and I did more.
What was the firm that you worked for?
It was Gardner Wynn. It had just merged, and it was still kind of the Dallas versus Houston integration thing, which wasn't,
That's not what integration was about.
Yeah, it was. There was definitely. Actually, the Gardner Wynn people in hindsight in Dallas were really cool. Definitely not your, quote unquote Dallas lawyer, but there still was. Well, the ones that I interacted with were, I thought, were pretty nice. And then it was just, you had the Houston, definitely had people who were like, screw Dallas. And
Gardner's gone now, right?
It's now Foley Lardner, which is part of the reason why I'm at Bradley. A great firm, but it's
Philadelphia?
Milwaukee. It really is a great firm, and I really liked all the people I met. But they're one of those firms with the mega rates, and I do a lot of, which I'm sure we'll get to, but I represent oilfield service and drilling contractors, but have to deal with insurance companies. So I've got to have some flexibility with rates, and they were going to jack my rate up to the point where I was going to have to retool, and I just wasn't ready to do that. But no, Gardner Wynn was great. In fact, you mentioned the Dallas office. That was probably one of the foremost trial sections in the state at the time, particularly not particularly in Dallas, because Bobby Meadows is a phenomenal lawyer. Bruce Hurley is a phenomenal lawyer. Jeff Bracken, who was my mentor, and several others who I've learned just a great deal being there for 23 years. A guy named Mike Wall. In fact, Mike Wall is probably, I consider Jeff my mentor, and he really gave me the opportunity that I had to be able to try cases like, because he represented Pace Concerts and Houston McLean. So I did Astros work. I did premises cases at the Astrodome, Astro Hall.
Patty LaBelle?
He did that. He did have the Patty LaBelle case.
At Conneaut
Airport? Yeah.
Yeah. Guys
are bodyguard, but yeah.
Yeah, bodyguard, basically cold cock. Well, not, he didn't cold cock him. I mean, this guy was being obnoxious, and it had like literally a fifth of Jack. And he basically not confronted, but he was just kind of harassing Patty LaBelle, trying to get in her car in the little porte-cochere. And he basically made a threatening move, and the bodyguard
laid him out.
Oh yeah, saw the video.
And that was I think it was Judge Ellison's court we were talking about earlier.
Could be.
And in fact, Jeff asked me if I would try it, and he then talk to the client. The client goes, no, we've hired you. And so, yeah, I think in voir dire he had like literally a bottle of Jack, of what little voir dire you could do, but he had a bottle of voir dire on the counter or on the bit.
I knew Jeff when I was a baby lawyer, and I knew him personally and had never really dealt with him professionally. And then when I was a defense lawyer, very early on, I might have been licensed to practice maybe 6 months. And I walked into a hearing in chambers in Judge Floyd's court in
Beaumont,
in Jefferson County. And I walked in about 3 minutes late. And it was fine. No, I was completely superfluous to the proceedings. But we walked out, and there was a confrontation between Jeff, who's not a small fella, and the plaintiff's lawyer, and it was crackling. Like I was like, I'm so glad I don't know anything about this case, but he's quite a presence in the courtroom and in any kind of a small space. He was reading this plaintiff's lawyer the riot act, and I was like, you guys want to go get a snack at the gas station we can hit Papado on the way out?
Yeah, Jeff's he was a former lacrosse player at Dartmouth, but a great guy. And like I said, I mean, he's a great trial lawyer and, taught me a ton. He really good lawyer.
Yeah, there was a lot of good. Bill Matthews also there at the time.
Yeah, Bill and Jim Sentner.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Jim was there. We were there, but Jim was one of those guys. In fact, when he retired, I gave we did a little dinner and a toast, and I said, Jim, you had this little, what would Jesus do, little wristbands. I think what would Jim do? Because he was just so old school, just a gentleman's lawyer, so even keel. You couldn't get under his skin. And like when I have a difficult plaintiff's lawyer to deal with, sometimes I think of Jim. How would Jim handle this situation? Same with Mike Wall. Mike Wall was a great mentor because I would go into his office. I bet I went into his office 1,000 times, and he was right next door, and he had this lamp that extended over us, and he would push it down and give me his undivided attention. And I think out of 1,000 times, maybe there was one time he said, hey, Jeff, hold on 1 second, give me 10 minutes and then come back. And he would give me the most sage advice of anybody. He was really almost a father figure. And we tried a case in Albinet's court. It was one of the biggest cases I've had, and he had just been on the bench for about nine months, I guess.
State bench or federal bench?
State bench.
That was his first trial.
You were Al Bennett's?
Yeah, they did a UPS case in there.
Huh.
When he took the federal bench?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
okay.
so we had this, it was a really bad burn case, Oilfield case. And so the lawyers from Mississippi, and then their local counsel was a guy named Brian Stewart. I don't know if you know Brian from San Antonio. Great guy. And in fact, I just saw him a couple of weeks ago, and he was their local counsel. But I asked, I was lead counsel, and I asked Mike to help because we had these corporate rep depots coming up, and I needed help. And he came in, and he's probably 15 years my senior. And he came in, and he was, second chair, and provided some incredible help with it. He actually got the really technical side of the case, and he and Brian dealt with that. But he was just such a team player and a great partner, and really my comfort level when I had him join the case was, really heightened it. And then we actually did pretrial for a week. Judge Bennett was an awesome judge. He called balls and strikes about as solid as any judge I've been in front of. We tried it for 3 days, and we ultimately settled. In fact, he did a mediator's proposal.
Bennett?
Brian,
the magistrate?
No, Bennett as the state district judge.
Okay.
And in fact, Brian approached me and said, hey, Jeff, because we've been trying to settle it, but they kept on moving. We'd make an offer and they'd move it up. And, and so Brian really thought the offer was reasonable. And so he said, let's get Judge Bennett to maybe even do a mediator's proposal. And Judge Bennett said, I'll do it, but I'm only going to do it this one time, and I need to talk to the plaintiffs by themselves. Do you have a problem with that? I said, I didn't. Brian and lead counsel for them said no. I said, we don't have a problem with that. And we ended up settling it 3 days in. And then at Judge Bennett's investiture for the federal bench, he actually mentioned that case as one of the two cases, one as a lawyer, one as a judge, because about 6 months after that after the trial was over, he got a letter from the wife. The guy that was burned was just salt of the earth. I mean, just a really, he was a strapping, good looking guy. And I mean, he was burned 95% of his body. He was a severe catastrophic burn. And the wife sent a letter to Judge Bennett thanking him for giving him closure on it. And that really moved him, and he mentioned it in his investiture speech. So
I think Judge Bennett's a great judge. I had cases in front of him on the state bench. Chas Place and I had a case in front of Judge Bennett.
Oh, you did? That was his...
How long was he on the state bench? I didn't know. I mean, he was just...
I could say a year.
09, and then took the probably 09 to... Well, he was an Obama appointee, so somewhere between 2009 and 2016.
Yeah, I think it was like... Yeah. He was there like mid-14, because that's when I would have done. The Harry Odell.
That sounds about right.
Got hit by a postal truck.
Okay, so I want one thing, you do oilfield stuff, and we have not had many defense lawyers on, although, sometimes you're wearing the plaintiff's hat because you're doing, company
that doesn't count.
stuff. But yeah, defending, cases like that. But oilfield is to me, and Kyle's done a bunch of this. Have you done some? Yeah, oilfield covered a lot of the maritime stuff because it's the same concepts of drilling. But what part of your practice you'd say career-wise, what percentage has been oilfield, either injury or indemnity stuff?
It's litigation, yeah. So basically starting in 1997, I mean, like I said, I cut my teeth on just concert and premises cases, which were, not a great, big exposure cases. And actually, Jeff Bracken and the firm was representing a company called Gray Wolf Drilling. It was a pretty big drilling contractor. And my first case was a amputated leg on a drilling rig.
Totally, that's expensive.
Yeah.
Was it expensive back then?
You know what? We got summary judgment on it. So
God's work. God's work. Fully called.
We were in McMullen County, and we got summary judgment. So the deal in most of these, really, there's the indemnity, the knock for knock indemnity, where the drilling contractor service company has to represent the oil and gas company. And so that's, I started, representing oil and gas companies do these indemnities, and that was one of them. And so you had, obviously Chapter 95 and, the old Redinger, control, which is kind of come back as Chapter 95 is kind of morphed back and forth on the applicability issue. But yeah, so I started representing this drilling contractor, and then it's just expanded to representing a number of other drilling contractors, service companies, and then big oil and gas companies, ConocoPhillips. Super fascinating work because a lot of it's very technical. And so you really become a mini expert, particularly on the downhole cases, which I think you were referring to, which is disputes between the oil and gas, the E&P companies and the service companies. And frankly, I've gotten lucky over the years that I've not been conflicted out. I don't think I've been conflicted out once on those kind of cases, because typically it would be the mom and pops that would sue the service companies because they couldn't withstand whatever mishap there was, whether it was a downhole tool or blowout or something like that. And so with the big guys that typically I would represent, didn't have those conflict issues. And so
are most of your cases like personal injury fights, or are they, we messed up this drilling site and we lost a bunch of tools down the hole? Is there,
you got 80-20 is probably catastrophic injury and death cases. And then 15-20% are the commercial disputes between the E&P companies and the service companies.
What are a couple of plaintiffs' lawyers that you find well respected in that area? Texas wise.
If the answer is none, that's
and then I'll ask you which firms appear the most in those cases.
It's interesting. That's a really good question, because a lot of times for the plaintiffs' lawyers, there's obviously some really good plaintiffs' lawyers who know how to handle and big catastrophic injury. Obviously, the Arnold Nickens, those guys over there certainly know what they're doing. I'm in a case with Mo Aziz right now, and
smart.
He's very, very smart. I don't know how much oil and gas cases he does, but he's picked up on it really, really quick. He's incredibly prepared. But as far as plaintiff's lawyers who really know their way around that, there was a guy named Roger Brawl. I don't know if you guys know Roger. I don't even think he's practicing law anymore.
No, he was a fraternity brother of mine. He was general counsel. I think he had his own oil company at some point.
Oh yeah, and his own well service company.
Yeah,
And his lawyer?
Yeah. Well, he started out with Fulbright, then worked for Michael Watts, and then he did his own thing. I think with like Brian Harris. I'm not sorry, David Harris.
Seco Harris. Seco White Houser Harris.
So Roger was probably the most knowledgeable of like knew all the downhole stuff. And frankly, I go up against a lot of plaintiff's lawyers who just don't do that technical stuff.
Well, you're doing that. You are a repeat player, and they're not necessarily right. They're taking trucking cases and oil well cases, so probably rare that you come across a plaintiff's lawyer that knows that as you do.
Well, and it's obviously they're becoming more and more prevalent, and so, but yeah, on the technical side of things, and a lot of them are just surface cases, where something's happened on the surface, something falls out of the rig or something like that.
Yeah.
On the technical downhole side, it's usually the blowouts. For example, the one I was mentioning earlier was a case where it was all about how they, kept the pressure. It basically was an underbalanced well that came in, and they had a rotating head on there, and it came apart, and there was an ignition, and it became a blowtorch. And the plaintiff was a derrick hand. He was up in the derrick, and it was a blowtorch. And when they got to him, he's like, "Push me off."
Yep. Yeah.
Push me off. So that would have a lot of downhole technical aspects to it, but a lot of them are, deal with technical issues, and there's a lot of terminology with regard to who the personnel are and things like that. But yeah, so I think it's fascinating.
So 3 of us aren't very smart, and we're essentially ne'er-do-wells, and we're going to start our own oil and gas company, and we've chosen the name Zapata Oil.
Mm-hmm.
We all agreed on that, right?
I think George H.W. Bush, and he had that first.
Well, maybe next time.
Yes. Yeah, the oil and gas, would you go, and Representative Gray Wolf, would you go out to the site, or, would it put on a helmet and go, or a hard hat and go talk to the people and then show you, like, here's what we do? And
actually, the first Gray Wolf case I had was we went out we got the call the day it happened. And in fact, I went out there with Bruce Hurley.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I'd ever been on a rig. And I'd probably been, called out on probably, 20 major events and fatalities that all, they never happened during the week at 8:00. In fact, one call I got was, Sunday, it was Easter Sunday, and had to go to the rig and do the investigation, deal with OSHA. So I'll do it basically from day one all the way through trial. And so, I've got basically a kit with a hard hat, steel-toed boots, gloves, safety glasses, the whole thing. And I've got some associates who I would, have kind of trained up to be able to do that. So I try to avoid having been out there on day one, being at my age. But there's a lot of site visits and
inspections.
Yeah. And a lot of them obviously in the Permian, Reeves County have a number of cases. And Eddie and Little
County, every single case I have to be in Reeves County, every single one.
It's funny you say that because
unless it's changed, but I had a few cases out there, and it was just like,
I had
raking in money. It was great.
Well, but they don't, when they have the opportunity, normally they file in Harris County now.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I don't get that many Reeves County cases. Now the drilling has gone a little bit north into New Mexico. So into Eddie and Lee. And so I'm licensed in New Mexico. And so there's a number of my cases that are in New Mexico now. But there's not that many that I see get filed there. I had one of a blowout there. It was not an injury case, but it was a dispute. And it was Judge Parks, who was a great judge. And then I've had a few cases. It was Judge Swanson. He retired in December, but it's not a bad place to be. Particularly with the judges we had, because they were really good judges. The juries, were I think there was a couple of big verdicts out from that area, but they don't really file there anymore.
How close is Landman to the real thing?
My brother, who worked on the rig for a while, was saying, he was like, that's not far off.
Yeah. That's a good question. The funny thing is that I've got my brother and my nephew are big in the oil business, and they both live in Midland, and then obviously they're on the law side. And so I've dabbled a little bit on the investment side. So I see a little bit of both, but the funny thing about that female lawyer that went out there is a 5-year lawyer who's a specialist in minimizing exposure. Everything she did maximized the exposure.
100%.
And so that was kind of funny. And then second that, she, Billy Bob Thornton makes that show.
He's great.
I'm not sure how popular it would be without him. And the dialogue that they give him and how he delivers it is unbelievable.
His wife in that show, or his ex-wife, she's pretty good. And I didn't realize she was the love interest in Varsity Blues.
Yeah.
Well, I did not know that until recently.
So one of the things that I thought was kind of the kind of blasé attitude of the oil companies, I remember when I did defense work, the first oil field case I defended sat in the room while the partner was talking to the client, not the carrier, the client. And, this is all nonsense and it's a frivolous case and blah, blah, blah. And okay, well, what were the injuries? Well, this piece of pipe, it shouldn't have been pressurized and it blew these two guys into 1 million little pieces. It's just totally frivolous and ridiculous. And then the next case I had, literally same carrier, different client. Well, it's ridiculous and frivolous and, you guys should be able to get us out of this right away. Okay, so what are the injuries? Well, we decapitated this guy.
Slowly.
And so obviously we're lawyers, right? We didn't create these problems. We walk into them mostly baked. But that was one thing that I was always like, one of the things that I knew I didn't want to be a defense lawyer. No offense to you at all. It's good work.
No, he means offense.
No, it's important work, and I'm glad good lawyers do it. I really do. It makes my job easier when there's good lawyers on the other side. But that was one thing that I'm sure it's not that way with all carriers and all clients, but I had just some people that were like, oh, this is frivolous and ridiculous. We only killed like 6 people. And you're like, I don't know. That seems like a big deal.
But yeah, and that was, like I mentioned earlier, the escalation and exposure from doing my premises cases to that was the eye opener, and realizing that you got, it's funny, like if I have a momentary lapse of judgment at my desk, and most I'm gonna get is a paper cut.
Sure.
If you have a momentary lapse of judgment, out on an oil rig, it can be catastrophic in an instant. Now, same thing for driving a car. You have
Truck driving.
yeah. Or just for refinery down the car, driving down the road and you're not paying attention. You look at your phone or whatever, and you run a red light. That can happen. But I think that's, so many of these injuries are simply, these guys are trained and they just have a momentary lapse of judgment or attention or whatever. And something catastrophic happens.
Sure.
It's just when you're dealing with that kind of equipment, pressures, flammable environment, it's not, management. And that's obviously the cases that are tried on the plaintiff side, is they want to make it all about management.
As a defendant, you look at these cases and you think, how many Mark Wahlberg movies will be made out of this ass?
No,
how many Wahlbergs?
From the plaintiff side, I always look at oil rig and refinery cases the same, which is for something to go wrong that bad, a number of rules had to be broken, which is why we always go towards management, because management, per their carrier, have all these rules in place. And therefore, we could pick apart and make it look like it was a lot more rules.
No, and that's. In fact, there's an expert. I won't name names because he's.
We'll talk after this. We'll talk after.
It's pretty prevalent. But you're having a representation at PTEX, which is a University of Texas extension, I think, and they do these classes like Oilfield 101. And he put on a PowerPoint. He said every catastrophic injury there's at least. I think he said at least 8 causes, at least 8 decisions that were made. In the case I had in Reeves County, and back about 15 years ago, I literally had a chart, and it was a blowout, but nobody got hurt, thankfully. But I had a chart, and it was basically 10 decisions, 10 missteps were made, and I had the I rented the blowout preventer. I was a rental company for the blowout preventer, which is a terrible name for a product that doesn't do your.
Yeah, you one job. It's in the name. You're a spell it.
Yeah, that was the problem. It's, we're the fail safe. We're the last line of defense, but there's all these other decisions that were made that we didn't have anything to do with. And we tried that one we tried for 5 days and ended up settling it the 5th day, and for half of what the original offer was. And that was it. One of the funny things about that is it was an oil and gas company. They had a blowout. Took them 2 weeks to get it under control. It was a sour gas well.
Ooh.
And then they spent 15 months trying to fish out the tools in there because they claimed it was like a $50 million well. We were saying it was really like a $5 million well. You shouldn't have spent that much money. But they spent 15 months doing it. So we tried we're on the eve of trial, and they're going to call their company man, their consultant, to tell the story, walk the dog on what happened. They can't find him. They don't really have anybody with the company. They have the owner. He's not going to be the guy. So they have a guy who had joined the company 3 months after the blowout. He clearly knew all about the fishing job and all that.
Wait a minute. They couldn't find him? Like he went like Denzel Washington? Like just...
Well, he was outside of subpoena range, so they couldn't. Yeah. So they said, well, we're going to call Don Hale. And because he was the corporate rep for the deposition.
You can make anybody a corporate rep. Yeah.
And I said, okay, you can call him, but there's not going to be any hearsay. There's not going to be any hearsay. Mm-hmm. I can ask him any question I want, just like in a corporate rep depot. And they said, that's fine. And so they put him on, and he walked through what happened and all that stuff. And I put on my entire case through it.
Yep. Best thing I can get is a corporate rep that came after the fact.
Yeah.
Nothing better.
Well, in fact, the court reporter, we had an official court reporter, and then we had we agreed to have basically a shadow and to do our dailies. And she was with Worldwide. She's awesome. In fact, still use Worldwide in that court reporter. And she stopped me at like day and a half in because I literally put my whole case on. She goes, Jeff, and we're starting the day. And she says, Jeff, I gotta ask you a question. I'm confused. And I said, well, Phyllis, please tell me. I want to make sure that everything is clear. She goes, I thought the plaintiff was supposed to put on their case. So it really worked out well. And we ended up, like I said, settling 5 days in for about less than half of what the drop dead number was before trial.
What's the biggest verdict you've been on the wrong side of? It's always a fun question.
Oh, gosh. I know.
Because, hey, our audience is going to go, you hire that one. He does big cases. Could have been double. Could have been $1 billion, but he was there.
Even better if it got reversed on appeal.
Yeah.
So the biggest verdict was in 2008 was a
good time to be a plaintiff lawyer with
Oklahoma City, federal court in Oklahoma City. And it was basically what happened was a piece of the monkey boards, which is what the derrick can sits on, came loose, fell out of the derrick, and landed on a member of the casing crew, and hit him in the head to where he was able to recover, but he had a neurological vision issue. Literally, it was basically you could see out of one eye with a tunnel, but he had no peripheral. So tried it against a really good, kind of quirky, but really good Oklahoma City lawyer. And we went to mediation, and we offered, I think we offered them 1.5, and they were at 5. No, they were at 5. And at the end of the mediation, he goes, why don't we just do a high-low at those parameters? And so
terrible idea. I know where that's going.
Yeah. So we ended up trying it. I got it under the high.
Oh, okay.
But he asked for $10 million in closing, and I asked for 1.8, and I think the jury came back at 3.5. And the Judge Cawthorne, great judge, she went and talked to the jurors, and came back and said, and the plaintiff's lawyer had left. It says, well, I just want to let you know, I'll share with you. They were saying that the fact that you stipulated liability. Well, no, that was key point. We stipulated liability.
Just tried the damages.
Stipulated liability, tried damages, got rid of the gross case.
I don't ever want a case asked to. You're too smart, especially because you said you asked the jury for 1-8. That's the smart move, not zeros, which I don't run into all the time.
And I think, frankly, the way that and maybe it's before its time, because I think the way, unless you got a great liability defense, I think you almost have. I mean, you don't have to necessarily stipulate the liability.
No one ever does,
but you got to be held accountable,
except some
responsibility, and seeing more in focus groups, and you really do get you get some bang for your buck on that. But that was the biggest one.
3.5. All right, I'm not going to ask you what your biggest settlement is,
because
I just based on some of the law firms you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, no, that I've paid out plenty, but in fact, had a case with Kurt Arnold, and we're meeting with David Matheson before your day, because I'm trying to use Peter on all my cases now.
Me too.
And he said, and we were really far apart, and it was a burn case, and Matheson goes, and we both shared kind of our focus group results, and Kurt's was way up here and mine was low, and I said, and we were in a room with Kurt, and I said, well. And I looked at Kurt and I said, did you admit to liability? And he didn't answer. Said that was the difference, because we tried it over 2 days. One where we contested like hell. Second day, we basically conceded some responsibility and the numbers went way down. And so,
because they're not pits anymore. Now you're just saying, let's pay reasonable, not we didn't do anything wrong.
Well, and it's even better when the plaintiff doesn't concede some responsibility when they clearly they have some responsibility.
But I've never had a case where my client was responsible.
Well, then you get these experts who
you got to push them.
Well, and they come in, they said, no, that clearly got one right now where guy was clearly in the wrong position. And we're responsible because we activated this piece of equipment when it shouldn't have been. So we're responsible for what our employee did. But he was clearly in the wrong position, and their expert I got their report not too long ago, said 0 on, now granted, he's that guy and the decedent, so it's hard to put too much blame on him, but he puts 0.
Do you represent Muirfield Oil? Hope not. I just filed that.
In it with them.
Okay, I was going to say, I just filed a case against them, and I'm like thinking in my head, like, am I going to run into him anytime soon?
Well, we probably need to talk, because I'm getting a couple.
We might have to.
Well, too, on your Oilfield ones, you can also RTP usually the employer of the injured party, right? Because they can't sue their own employer typically.
That's why we go to New Mexico.
Oh, they don't have that?
No, they have a gun bar, but also how do you feel about hedonic damages?
Hedonic damages?
Yeah, so the wrongful death statute in New Mexico allows you hedonic damages, so you get all the damages you get here plus the value of the value of the life.
How do you spell that?
I think it's hedonic.
I see.
I mean, Kyle knows what hedonism is in Jamaica.
I think it's on it. Maybe it's made that up.
Mosh sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't think I've had a death case in New Mexico.
Oh. I had a defense lawyer once file a very
hedonic, hedonic,
a very serious.
I was like, shit, did I butcher that word?
And I'm not kidding you. I had a defense lawyer once file a pretrial brief about how I couldn't talk about the reptile.
Oh, I get that every case.
And hedonic damages. And this was very early on, like the reptile thing. And the law firm, it was Ramey Chandler. And I went in front of, I know some of the partners of it.
I did too. I was going to ask you who the lawyer is.
It was not one of the partners.
Okay.
It was one of their minions who showed up just to do pretrial. And the judge was like, well, what do you think about these limines on hedonic damages and the reptile? And I looked at the judge and I was like, am I some kind of sex snake? I have no idea what they're even talking about. I said, if they will explain to me what they don't want me to do hedonistically and snake-like, I'll probably agree. I don't plan on doing that.
I do the same. I've not read the reptile, so that at this point, I probably should have a few years ago when I started getting those motions in limine. But now I'm not going to read it so that I can say to the judge, like, Judge, I don't know what that is. If they'll tell me exactly what they don't want me to ask, I won't. But I don't want to. You can't grant this motion in limine because
I don't know what it is.
I don't want to step into it, and I can't agree to it because I don't know what it is.
Well,
something about being in the jury's mind. I'm not getting in there.
Well, there's that. I mean, I see two aspects of it: is making the jury be the conscience of the community, which is always, I think
Isn't that what juries are?
So to basically say, if you don't do this, you could be.
Well, I think aren't they
next.
the community and their conscience just determines what justice is? That's how I look at juries.
Where does that come into compensatory damages? That would come in perhaps in punitive damages.
Oh yeah, that's what I was speaking of. Oh, on compensatory, yeah, I get that, and I know what it is to an extent. I just don't know what questions I'm not allowed to ask.
Well, but the other aspect of reptile, which is not really reptile, but it gets subsumed into that, are questions like, well, you want to be the safest company possible. You're going to do everything you possibly can do to be the safest company and provide a safe workplace. Well, that's not the standard.
What a great thing!
What a reasonable person would say. It's not the standard. But all those needs put that on their website. So that's back when.
Same, safety means.
Start reading your clients' websites, and we'll stop asking about it.
Right. Well, but like products liability with cars. I mean, you could make them a lot safer.
But we have
in Florida, and
we have made them safer. That's pretty much what I did for the first 10 years.
You could put a speed governor. Nobody goes over 15 miles an hour.
You just ended wrongful death cases against auto manufacturers.
No, in fact, I really appreciate the opportunity to be part of this because I'm kind of one of those longtime listeners, first-time guests. But y'all had in fact, I was listening to one recently where you had that. I think he was taking credit for. The plaintiff's bar taking credit for, safer cars.
And yeah, there's a reason the Explorer looks like more like a minivan today than it used to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Bill's partner.
That's Bruce Castor. Yeah, Kyle Farah, Bruce Castor, Skip Lynch. That's what we do. We also, definitely, I definitely bragged to my partners for $976 million verdicts on a single event. So yeah, that happens too, but not in Texas. Don't worry, that's only in Philly.
Well,
Philly.
What I agree with you on and tell me if your research is this. When you admit to liability, that's almost the anti reptile. I don't know if there's a term for it because that takes all the out of the reptile.
It's the amphibian.
Is there a bunch of research on that kind of supports that?
No, I mean just what I've seen. Primarily on focus groups because I guess this example in Oklahoma City, but that was an 08. I mean, that was a long time ago. But I got to see it in action there because the jury told the judge that they would likely have awarded a lot more had we not stipulated liability. So, but really see more in the focus group side.
Who do you use? Or anybody you want to shout out that
Mark Sobis and drawing a blank on Dan. Feel terrible.
Sorry, Dan.
We'll edit this out. Kind of a spot that. But Mark Sobis,
just gonna put his name on your face right here.
Yeah, he's really good, and he's got a lot of oil and gas experience, and so I mean he is so intuitive too because you'll give him your 10-minute, 15-minute, he'll go, all right, we're going to look at this, and this, and he's already got it mapped out. Now he does a lot of those types of cases, so he already kind of knows that.
Is he predominantly a defense side?
Primarily defense. I think he does.
Whoever calls on the focus group side, I assume.
Yeah, I think he probably does both sides, but he's primarily for defense.
I mean, don't worry, we got ours.
And Jax. Thank God.
Jax. Is he out of Houston?
Jax?
Jacks.
Jax.
They were with Edge Consulting, and I think they started their own group. I think they're pretty much Texas centric. So I think he went all over the country, and I think they're trying to focus more on Texas.
I might use him in my next case just to see what it's like.
Yeah, it's very good, and he's got all the bells and whistles, the
clickers and
all that. Which
the dye.
You get a. I think I have a few things. Number, but I think the keypads. One, I think it's helpful, and you kind of do the focus group.
I think people are more honest when they don't have to say it out loud in front of people. Yeah, for sure.
But the other thing I think is that he says, and I noticed it keeps them more attentive.
Yeah, because they know they got something coming.
Right. And they know that they're supposed to be plugging it in. Now you get some of it with 5, that kind of thing.
Mom, during focus group, which is a fake trial, we give every juror this. Well, we don't, but our focus group people give them like a little controller, and they can rate different questions and things at different times. She's the only non.
Thanks for listening, Yvette.
Yeah. Hey, Ma. They do that in political stuff. Have you seen like Frank Luntz on during debates? They'll do that.
Yeah. Same thing with us with focus groups.
Well, good. Well, that's That's important. I saw some post on LinkedIn about jury research on just witnesses if they just don't answer the question directly, or they just hedge just a little bit, and there's saying it goes bad usually for defendants on that. And so that goes into prep, right? Your depot prep or your trial
Don't
prep.
tell him, Peter.
Oh, sorry.
You start doing
I
that.
think he already does it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he does. If he does, what's the biggest you've been lit up for? It was 3.5.
All our secrets away to Jeff.
Yeah.
He's never seen this.
When Jeff says I do a lot of oil field work, and you say what have you been lit up for, and he's like 3.5. I'm like, okay, I don't want a case against him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's witness prep is, it's an art. I mean, there's no science to it because every witness is different. I mean, I had one not too long ago just completely crater on me, and I think I pacified him too much. I kind of said, "Look, you got to admit to this part of it, but you got to push back on this one." And I thought that was pretty clear. And he goes, "So is it substantially certain to occur?" Oh, yeah. So absolutely, But then I have other witnesses like not too long ago, probably last week, where all I had to do is say, "I don't know." Oh my God. It's like, and then at the break, he would just pontificate. And at the break, I said, "Look, did you even know the answer to that?" "No, I was guessing." "Yeah, we're guessing." "Yeah, you were guessing on what this guy was thinking or what this guy was doing. Just say, I don't know." Sure enough, after the next break, I don't know. Think about how quick that went.
Yep.
A couple months ago, I was.
But I do caution him. I said, "Look, you can't say I don't know if you do know."
Yeah, 100%.
And so
That's way worse.
But there, I thought he was going to be a good witness, and suddenly he is given lots of answers to questions he did not know the answer to.
I was taking a corporate rep depot of I won't say what kind of a facility because it would give it away. And like he came in super nervous. Like this guy was super nervous, and it was his second depot. He had been ordered to sit for a second depot as a result of a sanction. And my third question was, "You'd agree with me that my client's injury is a result of a catastrophically stupid safety failure on behalf of your company?" And he goes, "Yes." And the other side goes, "We're going to take a break."
You should have been like, "We don't need to. We're done."
Retro object to that.
Yeah.
So I was producing a corporate rep and another bad burn case. Cage boat ride was taking it, and he asked a question that we had gone over 7 million times. And he asked the question, is this, you responsible for this, or is your client responsible for this? And literally there was a pause. There was at least a minute.
Oh,
So then he picked up his honor, and I swear I was shaking. And then he says, "Can you repeat the question?" And yeah, it was a 1-sentence question. I'm like, oh my God. And so if you read it, it doesn't look that. And he ultimately gave the right answer, but there's a videographer, and I insert on the mediation, Kate showed the gap, and literally you're sitting there in it, and it was literally a minute.
That's long.
And the poor guy, what I found out I think it was either at a break, that he had just had knee surgery and he was on pain meds. He did not take that morning.
That's Cage's fault for not saying, "Are you on any medication that would inhibit your answer?"
So in addition to being nervous, I think he was
High.
he's whatever the opposite. I think
Detoxing from opioids. Yeah.
But the poor guy, he was a great guy. And I literally at the deposition, I think he wanted to curl up in my corner of my office.
I mean, literally,
I love that.
I'm so hopped up on hydrocodone right now that
That's soft stuff. You gotta get the oxy now.
yeah.
Because I presented him for a second round, and he was so much better. So I think a big part of it was the fact that he wasn't on his pain meds 2 weeks after he had knee surgery, which I didn't even know about until that break. So,
Which brings us back to prep.
Yeah. So Jeff, what advice would you give to plaintiff lawyers to prepare you or to educate you and your client to, ultimately trials are great and everything, but the result for the client is a settlement in one way or the other. So what do you see that the plaintiff lawyers do very well that help you do your job to evaluate risk and make recommendations? And what do you see that they don't do so well that they need to improve on?
well, I think the sophistication of demand letters these days, and frankly, given a demand letter that lays it all out. Mo Aziz, again, sent a very detailed demand letter that I can send on, and it's a roadmap. of what they're going to prove and what they're going to show, and testimony that favors them to where you could take it and say, he's kind of right here.
Yeah, this is what he's going to do.
He's stretching here. And so that's obviously very, very helpful to where I can take that, and then it educates the carriers, particularly if you got a big case and you got multiple carriers dealing with it, and you're not dealing with them. You're dealing, like, I get hired by the client. I have to deal with carriers and I deal with adjusters, but I'm representing the client. And so typically, the client is getting the periodic reports, because I pride myself on giving them, status, very, very detailed status reports as they're needed. And so they're pretty apprised of it, but being able to give them something that I think they can take, and then I can build up, I can take that and rebut what I need to, acknowledge what I need to, and lay it all out.
Is there anything at the beginning that can be done from the plaintiff side, and this is self-serving, where we can get whatever reserve is made at the beginning to be enough? Because too many times there's like a early small promise that turns into, I can't go turn around and tell them I now need that number because it was so underreported.
Not really, because I just assume any catastrophic injury case, the demand's going to be high 8 and sometimes 9 figures. And so, I mean,
perfect.
I don't think the plaintiff's lawyer can do much about it, because we know, because I just see those demands over and over and over.
And venue matters a lot in that too.
Yeah, venue does matter. And so, yeah, I
just curiosity. Just trying to help I don't want my kid to go to state school. So
yeah, no, I think, and I also pride myself in, constantly evaluating the case. And, if it's something that kind of deserves an early mediation, the problem is, a lot of these plaintiff's lawyers I've already mentioned, just have a tendency not to really get serious about settlement until the eve of trial, which is, I guess, fine for a defense lawyer because you bill by the hour. But, to just, be in a position where you got a case that should settle. They're not really serious about settling until you're at the courthouse. So sometimes having already picked the jury.
I was going to say, sometimes that's the lawyer. A lot of times that's the client, plaintiff's client. Sometimes the plaintiff has got all kinds of crazy ideas about what's going to happen. And they got to suffer through the next 2 years, right? Before you can sit down and tell someone what having a deep colonoscopy about your personal life and your medical history, and you're sitting for a depot, what it's like. But until they go through it, they're bulletproof.
Well, and the attenuation from the emotions of what happened at that time does.
Well, that case that I was telling you about in Judge Bennett's court, he was reluctant to settle, because once they settled, it was now going to be the new life. And he was the center of attention. And he was not the kind of guy that it was all about him. He really was a really solid guy. In fact, I think every burn case I've ever had, the plaintiffs are just kind of salt of the earth. I mean, you wouldn't want that on your worst enemy. Mm-hmm. But and this is what was shared with me, is that, like, he really was reluctant to kind of have to go that next step,
face what's next in
life. And it turned out to be, he used it well, because he basically started with some of the money, started not a clinic, but basically kind of a clinic to help others that have been catastrophically burned.
Oh, that's awesome.
Almost a ministry.
Because burns are.
Yeah, no, they're horrible. And so, so he took that next phase. Tragically, he passed away about 5 years later, which he was a young guy, but the nature of the burns were such that it ended up being a heart attack. And it was really sad, but anyway.
Well, we've been going about an hour.
Yeah.
But this is why I like this podcast, because I feel like we could talk a long
I can go another hour.
Yeah, very productive, and hopefully
some Whataburger.
No, I would love to sit here and talk for another hour, because I love, as the mediator, I love guys on both sides talk productively about how to.
Yeah, and I didn't even, I wasn't even that hard on him.
Yeah. Okay, so the little personal side. So Jeff's a big golfer. Obviously, he had that little foray into a golf-related business. And Bill's a big golfer, so I thought y'all would probably get along and maybe hopefully go play golf together sometime.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for both of y'all travel all over the place. So I'll start with Jeff. Jeff, best course you played, or your favorite course, not necessarily best, but favorite course, and then one you'd like to play, and then third is a good golf destination for like friends, guys trip, or whatever.
Well, two of those the answer may be different after next week because I'm going to Bandon Dunes.
Yeah, I've been, and that was my answer to one of those.
And that's in Oregon.
So that's in Oregon. We're actually going on Tuesday for the week with my brother, nephews, just kind of a hodgepodge of friends. It's a lot of fun. Pebble is number one of the courses I've played. I mean, it's just such a special place out there. The course I'd like to play the most would be Augusta, maybe followed, very closely behind that is Cypress Point. But I did play Muirfield Village last month, and that's a special place. I mean, I don't know if you played that.
I have not.
And that's on the outskirts of Columbus?
Yeah, it's it's right outside of Columbus. And the fairway, I don't think I've ever played a course in that good a shape. They've got the way they mow it, they've got the checkerboard look to it. And I was thinking they just do that for the tournament.
No, I do. Or seven, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's the whole year. And so that's a really special place. And, as far as, destinations, there's obviously Bandon. I've done Pinehurst. That's a lot of fun. Big Cedar, which it's in Missouri. That's kind of Paynes Valley. It's a tiger course, and they've got some really cool. Like we stayed in a cabin that overlooks Paynes Valley, and it had a big deck and a barbecue pit, and down below you walk down these stairs, and there was this long putting green. And so it's the developer, or the guy that developed it was whoever the owner of Bass Pro Shops is. Oh. And so he started the resort on the other side of the highway, and so it's the main clubhouse where the resort was, and they have a par 3. It's called Top of the Rock. It's the nicest par 3 you ever play.
Nice.
Every hole is almost a signature hole. In fact, they played a senior event there. It's only 9 holes. They played a full-blown senior event there.
You said 9 at 9.
It's just, I don't know if they played it as a 9. I think they just played it as a 9-hole course.
Nice.
They didn't even play it twice.
And what's it called?
It's called Big Cedar.
In
Missouri. So they Branson. I think you'd fly into Branson. Whatever that. There's 2 city airports, but that's really cool. That was a really cool place.
Okay.
But all the standard ones are, hard to beat.
Yeah.
Bill?
Nicest course I've ever played.
Her favorite?
Ohoopee Match Club is hands down my favorite.
In Georgia.
Yeah, it's in the middle of nowhere between Savannah and Atlanta. I mean, you take dirt road to a dirt road, and then they only have 50 members. Rory McIlroy. When you look at Rory McIlroy's,
you're not allowed to say who's members, though, Bill. We're gonna have to scrap that.
I'm not going to tell you who it was, but like Rory's head cover in his pro bag is Ohoopee, and so that's public knowledge.
Which one would you like to play?
I would next on my list of like to play would be Pine Valley in New Jersey. That's it's usually number 2 or number 3 in the
golf trip.
I mean, Bandon is probably the best one, but Scottsdale is right there. I mean, Scottsdale, there's just so much golf and it's so close. But Bandon's great, and then I think that's probably
the people that developed Bandon, I think, are building one in East Texas, right?
Yeah, not even East Texas. Like
it's in San Angelo. No,
it's like north.
It's in Nacogdoches. Yeah, it's in Nacogdoches. And I thought it was going to be called Rodeo Dunes, but it's not. I forget what it's called. But yeah, and I think it might. If it's not finished, it's real close. Yeah. So excited for that. And then there's another one called Childress Hall that's coming up. I think that's close to Wichita. So
me and Peter do our annual. We do Lions Municipal in Austin, and then we'll do Herman Park as a follow up.
Sure.
So
Herman Park, big controversial
fight over Lions.
No, that's
Herman Park.
No, Herman Park. They're going to turn it into basically a par 3.
Yeah, and then I saw that the person that donated the land, when he sent it, he said if it's not used for this, that he gets it back, and like his daughter or granddaughter is around now. I saw a news story about it like last week. Yeah, there's some controversy into what they can do with Herman Park now.
My brother was playing out there. He's a golfer. I'm not really a golfer. And early in the morning, and his ball lands underneath a park bench, and there's a gentleman sleeping,
Taking a nap.
and my brother walks up and realizes he can't really get to the ball, and so he takes another ball out and is going to drop it 10 feet away, and this homeless fellow wakes up and says, "Sir, play it where it lies."
You got to tip that guy.
Yeah, I'm out to bread.
All right. Well, Herman Park was not on y'all's list, but it's on Kyle's. So, all right. Well, Jeff, thanks a lot for joining us. Like I said, this was great, and that's exactly why we wanted to do this.
Awesome. Thanks for coming.
So having me. Yeah, anytime, welcome back. Because there's a lot more. I'm sure Bill's got a lot more.
Oh yeah, I get a couple more tequilas. This will get real fun.
Y'all go play golf and talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Definitely do that.
Yeah. So thanks everyone for watching. Follow us on Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, Amazon Music, TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram,
I think you nailed them.
Facebook,
Facebook. Yeah, we
Yeah.
do Facebook now.
Right on.
The Facebook.
all of them. All of them. Okay. Well, thanks a lot. We'll see you next week. Good night.